Hello, and welcome to session 5 of the character modeling streams, where I'm not going to tab into Blender right away. I am quickly checking the weather report on my phone because for the past several hours, been, it's supposed to rain around these parts, but I'm not seeing any rain. But when it rains, it's supposed to thunder around these parts, so trying to account for that. But been waiting for that to happen for the last couple hours, and it just hasn't, so I'm going to assume that it doesn't. But today's session is going to be shorter. I'm going to move on to Blender now. Today's session is going to be on the shorter side, because I have things to do tomorrow, and pretty early on in the morning. So I'm aiming for about 2 hours for this session, which is going to be fine still, considering the things that we have left to do in the clothing department are going to be like this here, the boots, the clothes pins, and this like employee ID card over here. And then the hands and the little gloves that go with the hands. And that's really going to be about it. Oh, and the hairpins and the piercings and earrings and so on. So we should be able to get, if not all of that, then at least most of that done. The hands are the part that worries me a little bit. That might be something that we need to leave for another session. But for the rest of it, I think that we should be able to get all of that done in like the couple hours I have. And also, if it does end up turning into a thunderstorm, I'm peering out my window to see, and it is dark outside, but not raining actively. If it ends up turning into a thunderstorm and I end up losing power or something along those lines, then I'm just going to call it there. But been a long time since that has actually happened, a thunderstorm just knocking out the neighborhood, so. But just in case the stream ends abruptly and the VOD on YouTube or Twitch, for anyone watching the VODs, just kind of cuts off at an awkward point, that means that, yeah, the storm knocked out the power. But I'm not going to worry about that for now, and I'm just going to try and figure out where, because this is where we left off. We have our jacket, and I'm pretty happy with this. Like, it is floating a little bit over here, where like it could be brought down a little bit harder, kind of like this. But I don't exactly want to do that either. Like, it's going to be... The places where this jacket is going to be sitting on the skin are going to be around the shoulders, where it is really closely sitting on the skin already. And then I guess around here as well, it would be further down. But then what we quickly run into if we try to do something like this is we're going to get clipping over here and over there. So maybe something like that. But I really do not want to mess too much with the jacket, like I will just end up ruining it. So I'm leaving it like this, and then if we ever need to make any kind of adjustment to the jacket, we'll find out when we're actually like texturing and we're able to bring our character into a T-pose and all of that. So, of the things remaining, I want to start off with something that is very simple, but will add a lot of detail, and that's going to be these clothespins over here. So, I've made these once before. I can't remember for what they would have been. The only difficult part is going to be this loop over here. That's going to suck, unfortunately. And then the fact that it kind of... The thin part starts here and then loops around and tucks back in over here. So... I'm kind of wondering... I guess I'm going to start... I can't exactly use this as a reference, but like I can't trace around this the method I'm going to add a cube here right now. And because I'm going to want to remember a little bit earlier this time than last time, but yeah, it is absolutely loading in a dot blend that turns off the screencast keys, but I'll just need to remember, like, I'll just make a note somewhere, if need be, to turn that on. I think all of the, like, 3D modeling keystrokes have been displayed already. But yeah, I could start off like this, but I prefer keeping things, like, locked without any kind of rotation, because, let's say, over here, I want to extrude. I can extrude along an axis very easily. Whereas if I'm rotated like this, it's going to be much more difficult. Like, okay, I can rotate in the, like, straight without causing a bend over here. But if I were to, let's say, delete that face and then do something like this, so we would wobble around, and there's no axis I can lock to. That's X. This would be Y. We can't see because we're looking directly at the Y-axis, and this would be Z. So there's no real clear way of just having our geometry go straight, which is something I'm going to want to have. So I'm going to undo all the way to the point where we rotated for the first time. And I'm going to move further down over here so that we can see the actual reference for the entire duration. And I'm going to roughly sketch out one of these. So I know that we're going to have a... I'm wondering if I think I might want to use a subsurf for this. So I'm going to add a subdivision surface, and I'm going to keep it at 1 for the time being. So I want to bring a little bit more detail to our subsurf, or our, like, basic mesh that we are subsurfing at the moment. And then I'm going to want to add another loop on both sides, and then delete these vertices so that we have this opening over here. Smooth that a couple times. I work in wireframe to be able to catch both of these vertices with one box selection. And this needs to be, like, pulled up, like so. They need to be a little bit longer. And then over here, I'm going to add a loop so that we can create this. And then this is obviously going to be a lot thinner. I also want to smooth it out now. And then I'm going to delete these two not that far. I'm going to delete this one vert here. And then would I be able to dissolve this? Yeah, that works fine. So with that dissolved, it's going to be much easier for us to start extruding from here. So I want to go far. And then I want to do the loop. So this is going to be really terrible. We're going to be solidifying this, so I don't currently care about the fact that we go from, like, we have a terrible bend over here. I think solidify might help with that. And then we loop around with our loop also starting to drift like this. What is numpad 1 doing? That's actually something I haven't explained. So with the numpad, you can snap into certain views. So numpad 1 is our frontal view, and numpad 3 is our side view. Control numpad 1 is our back view. This is going to be a lot more obvious when I unhide all of the geometry. So 1 is frontal, 3 is side, and this is specifically the... Well, I believe Blender calls right side, but like the left side of our model in the direction our model is facing. Control 1 is the back side, and Control 3 is the other side profile. And then 7 is top, and Control 7 is bottom. And then 6 and 4 rotate, and so do 8 and 2. And then 9 just kind of 180s. So flips to the other side completely. So I believe these can be... Yeah, okay. It says numpad 1. I'm actually pressing my numbers row. So I believe in the 4cc Blender starter pack, there is going to be some setting somewhere that enables this kind of thing. Like, it emulates your numpad by using your actual numbers row keys. But that's very useful for... Well, not just very useful. That's kind of necessary for being able to model in this way, considering the amount of tracing we do from a reference that's going to be only visible from these angles. So that really should be further up, so that we have a little bit more room to work with. I'm almost certain this initial attempt is going to look terrible, but we'll improve from there. So something like this, and then on the other side we can delete this face. And then, can I bridge these? Not really, so I'm going to have to... Oh yeah, and we've kind of looped around. Yeah, maybe I do want to fix that convex part, because now it will look odd. Or maybe I want this to be a circle to begin with. So I'm gonna make a clone of this so that we can return to that state if we need to. I'm going to try a completely different approach here, where this is actually going to be... What if it's filled? Let's see. We're going to end up needing to fix the thickness of this. Yeah, that's going to work a lot better. Except this needs to be further down. Smoothing will eventually help us out here a lot, but for now I don't want to smooth yet. And then, yeah, we want to be drifting over here as well a little bit so that we have clearance to actually loop around. And then this needs to become a face again, or... Yeah, this needs to become a face again. Then we extrude this a little bit and delete those faces, and then we can bridge these. And that's... Yeah, I am going to delete this one now. Just this is going to be our wedding candidate. you get the basic idea of what it's supposed to be, and then that is something we can work with. So I'm going to smooth a couple times, and then I'm going to focus on... I shouldn't smooth that part. So I'm going to select everything else, and then smooth everything else a little bit. So I'm going to add a... Oh, now it's pouring. Okay, the rain finally arrived. I'm going to add several loops here, actually. And then I did forget that this needs to tuck in over here, so I'm going to rip these apart. It really is pouring. Like, it's not coming, it's not strong enough to activate the microphone on its own, but yeah, I can hear it through the headphones. So this kind of needs to... I know that this underside actually is not solid, and we're going to do that by solidifying later on. So actually I'm going to leave it like that for now, and just extrude this in here, and then fill that, and now we've got the needle point. And then we kind of need to deal with this loop over here, so just rotate and resize things, and I want to see what a double subset would do for this. Increase our try count by 3000, and not really significantly improve anything, so I'm going to leave that at 1, because already just the 1... The 1 is adding about 650 triangles, which is kind of acceptable. It's still a bit painful considering how many of these we're going to have in the actual model. But then again, for a complex structure like this, 650 triangles, I can live with that. But we still do need to try and make this a little bit smoother looking by hand. So going to be tucked in very closely over here. And same over here. You can't quite see this one poking through. And I'm also going to try and make it like kinda even thickness. And the loop is not that big. So bring this in. I'll make it a little bit more circular still. I'm going to smooth a couple times around here. I'm actually going to smooth basically the entire loop, like so. And then I can select a part of the loop at least and just kind of fatten it out and scale it up. This as well. This entire thing needs to be squished a little on the z-axis. And that needs to be made uniform with the rest of the needle point. So yeah, this does... You can see better here, so it does loop this way. So it is supposed to be like this. I do want to not have it bend too hard, considering this is still... We are working with metal here, even though it's thin metal. I don't quite like how thick these are. I'm going to select, again, much of the loop over here and scale along Y. And then this is way too thick on Y as well. And then I need to delete the faces up until this point. And then we're going to need a solidify. it does terrible things over here, so I'm going to try and do only rim, and that will help us out a lot. Maybe. Well, it shouldn't be that thick in the first place. Something more like this. So it's supposed to be solidifying that part as well. Now it is. The issue is that it's also solidifying the inside of our loop over here. And as far as I can tell, at least with Blender 2.79 solidify modifier, there's no real way we could deal with that. So I'm going to turn solidify off for the time being and see if there would be any way of making this work more nicely, where I could do something like this. So I want to select all of these faces here and then duplicate them, and with shrink/fatten, shrink them down a little bit. I also want to hide our needle point like this, and then I should be able to go in here and connect those. I also want to hide this loop over here and this loop over here. And then I might be able to go in and oh, it doesn't know where to go because I've hidden things. Okay. So I need to fill all of these in manually. Yeah. So first of all, just kind of making sure that, okay, it doesn't look very decent. I'm going to leave them unconnected and now hide the sides. Would it look okay if I just filled these in, then unhit the rest? Okay, and then this just needs to be flipped around like this. And then unhide. And it needs to be scaled down still further. If it can, maybe it can't. Yeah, it can. So I'd want to, like, have those be connected. And then kind of move. Yeah, it doesn't know where to fill. So I'd kind of need to do something like this. It's very hard to see down there. Yeah, I just don't like how it works with how it pokes through. So I'm going to undo. Yeah, undo up until this point. And I'm just going to toggle our solidify back on and work on them. How much does it add? It does make it almost 1,000 triangles per one of these. So then let's kind of see how it would look like without subsurf, and if we instead, well, okay, this serves the exact same purpose. That just kind of adds. If we did our own subsurf, like so, 16482. Yeah, that's exactly the equivalent of adding a subdivision surface at one iteration. So this is what we're going to be stuck with. The one last thing I could try for optimizing is dissolve some edges over here. So again, let's see, 164824. Select maybe these all. Okay, I need to leave one of them. Or not. That's gotten rid of 200 of them. I can do the same over here. For a more minimal impact. And then I don't think there's anything else I can get rid of. Would be so much easier if I could only do the rim. But I really can't, unfortunately. This has to be solidified. I guess what I could do is, first of all, have solidified before subsurf. That doesn't look very nice. So what I could do is I could give this the metal material, and then I'm going to add a... Yeah, okay, I'm just going to add a dummy material over here. Just, it can be whatever. Then in our solidify, I'm going to be using this trick several times when texturing, so this is not something that, like, needs to be memorized right now. It's going to come up several times later on. I'm going to add the material index offset over here to be 1, and what that does is our actual mesh, so this stuff, is going to be assigned to the metal material, and then everything that our solidify modify has generated, so these edges like these, the thickness of our mesh is going to be added to material index offset 1, so the one material below our current material. So now, when I apply our subsurf and solidify, and select everything that is metal and hide it, I get access to... Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to undo a little bit, because there's some loose geometry there. So if I remove doubles, okay, that did nothing. Yeah, there's something a little bit weird going on over there. But I guess that's fine. Yeah, so apply our subsurf and solidify, and then hide our metalness to end up with this. I need to figure out what that is supposed to be. But now, if we look over here, we can see that our solidify can actually end over here. So this doesn't need to be solidified, and then none of the needle needs to be solidified. So I can delete these vertices, and then delete these vertices. And then I'm going to undo a little bit, and instead of deleting these vertices over here, I'm going to start deleting from here. And now we have the benefits of having a nice solid surface over here where we actually want some, but then not having any other solidified stuff hidden inside our loop over here. That would be just causing unnecessary vertex inflation and triangle inflation. So I'm still not quite sure what this is. If I select all of this, it leaves these. What are these? Okay, those don't look to be that abnormal. Yeah, okay, I guess those are fine. They're just a bit weird to have them floating like that. But then the final thing, I really ideally would have done this while I still had my subsurf, but I am not about to go back again. We're going to need to have this curve a little bit more, like over here. And then this needs to be coming, like this gap here is much smaller. than what we have right now. So we need to pull this up. Need to pull all of this up as well. Or rather this up. Almost all the way over here. But then this part needs to stay down. And here you can see how difficult life is when you don't have your subdivision surface modifier. All of this smoothing that I'm doing by hand would have been done by subsurf. So this needs to be a little bit angled like so. And I want this pulled up like this. And to the front like this. The gaps should still be smaller, which means that I guess this upper edge needs to be brought down as well, and this needs to be brought forward. Yeah, that's about the extent I'm going to go. So that's close enough. It needs to be a little bit taller still. So something like this, maybe. And now we can kind of rotate this and see that, yeah, that's the correct length. So it could be better. I wonder if I'm going to try this again. I wonder if our smooth modifier would have... No, not really. Yeah, it loses a lot of the thickness, so... Once again, smooth wouldn't really have helped us. But yeah, this could be rounder and prettier. But I am also very much aware of the fact that this... even though these add a lot to the model, they're not going to be that big. You're going to struggle to see some of these details, such as the fact that this is not a perfect circle. And I should be doing my best to not fiddle with it without a subsurf modifier. So, I'm going to save this as 16 Clothespin. And then start positioning these where they need to be. So I want to have our prototype off to the side here, so that we have one of these that has not been rotated yet. And then I'm going to start placing these where they need to be. So one here. And for now, I'm just placing these without actually, like, looking at how they work with the jacket. I'm going to actually put them in through the jacket once I'm done placing all of them and, like, scaling all of them. Right now, I just want to get the rough idea and estimate of where they should be placed and their orientation. And then these triple ones over here. And the sleeve ones could actually be mirrored, which is something I am absolutely going to do because the jacket is also mirrored, so that will save me so much trouble. So these I can delete. These I can separate into their own mesh and then give them a mirror modifier. And yeah, you can see that places them... Well, apart from this one, that places them exactly where they need to be. And then these other ones, these have to be... These can't be mirrored. So that would be all of them. I again don't think there's going to be any around the back, but if at any point I feel that the back of the jacket is feeling a little bit underwhelming, one easy way to... I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I guess I'm going to worry about that later. Might be a zipper, yeah. It's kind of the... For some reason, the little strand of hair is going through it. Or, no, it's going behind it, yeah. This is just badly visible because it's been upscaled. Oh, yeah, and there's another one on this side. Oh, yeah, and you can see it from the... Yeah, that's definitely a feature. Okay. I don't know what it's zipping up. But it is a zipper. So that's good to notice. Wouldn't want to be omitting important details like that. But yeah, if at any point I decide that the back of the jacket, and that's going to be covered up by hair for the most of the time anyway, is a little bit too bland and requires a little bit more life to it, then I might add in a couple of these clothespins around there as well. So we've got all of the geometry we actually need. So I can now start working on bringing these close. I can now also delete this because I don't need it anymore. So just kind of one by one. And again, I need to eliminate as much of the visual clutter as possible. So it's going to be here. And this side is piercing. Oh yeah, I need to like flip this around like this. Yeah, and then it's going to be like that. So we're going to be careful about that one as well, which side of them is piercing. So this one's going to be fine like this. This one needs the same treatment, complete 180. And then the upper side's going to be the one piercing through. And that's now completely different to how it looks from the frontal reference. I'm going to try to account for that, but that's going to be difficult. Especially just while rotating things. The important thing here is going to be that it exists. I'm not going to care too much about how perfectly it matches up with the 2D drawing, because we're going to be seeing this from 3D anyway, so I, for example, don't like how the angle of that, so I'm just going to go and rotate that like so. If it clips into the body, it doesn't, so that's good. But if any of these were to clip into the body, I would have to adjust them even further. And this needs to be the exact other way around as well. So like this. And then it's going to be the upper side piercing through around over here. And since we're working with 3D, I want to try and make sure that we are actually piercing through the material. So we're going from underside to upside instead of doing something like this, where we're actually just not going through the entirety of the material. Such as here, for example. The problem with this one is going to be that it's so close to the actual surface of the jacket. So that's kind of going to have to be like this. We don't have enough clearance here. I could lift the collar up. Something like... more like this. It's supposed to have more air gap in there anyway. And then now... we are kind of fine. Yep, that's fine. And then this one, I believe, was fine to begin with, yeah. And so is this one. So move on to our other set. The sleeve ones. This is the wrong way around. And then the upside needs to be piercing about here. These sleeves are actually going to be weird to like pierce through. Just kind of gotta try and clip in there. If it becomes very difficult and if it becomes impossible to get something like so close. Yeah, if it becomes too difficult to get it completely clean, we can cheat a little bit and like bend it in over there. And that'll work. Although I do want it floating. I like the way this one is floating. So I'm going to scale this one up to be a little bit bigger, and I'm going to try and have it poking out over here. Which is, again, going to be difficult, but... what if we... oh, that bends too much. And what if we now... where to pull this in over here? Cheat just very slightly. We still don't kind of have, quite have the effect, but that's fine. And then this one, for once, is actually the right way around. No, it's not. It's almost the right way around. There, and it goes in about here. Like that, except I want this part to be a little bit further out. And then these three, where they just need a rotation along the... make sure I didn't accidentally extrude anything. Yeah. Light rotation around the z-axis. And they are all, again, about the middle. So, like this. And it's once again ended up drifting. But as we've kind of already established, we don't care about that anymore. It would be just unnecessary time spent trying to get these to line up as perfectly as possible with the reference sheet. The important thing is that these exist. And like if we're really working on a like professional quality model, then with the rigging of the model, these would be accounted for. Like these would like maybe jiggle around a little bit during movement. That needs to be pulled in again to create the effect like so. So that's all of them placed. But now I need to colorize them. So we've got kind of the same... I'm going to call this the same pink and green as the hair. This is a more washed out pink, so that's something we're going to adjust for during texturing. Now I don't have my reference open, and I'm in the completely wrong folder as well. So I am going to give them their own material after all, because it's going to be easier. Easier when we get to texturing, so that I don't have to do it then. So try and grab a nice and, like, frontal exposed to light kind of a bit from here. These are more purple anyway, now that I've got a color actually selected. So these ones get a material. Duplicate that and call it purple. And then these ones also get our purple, and then we figure out which ones are not going to be purple. And that's going to be... Oh, yeah, I actually didn't account for that. So this one's not going to be purple, even though it's mirrored. Well, these ones are green, and the middle bit here is green anyway, so... I'm going to select these two. Add our hair highlight green. Do the same for the middle one down here. And then for now, this one's also going to be purple. But then we're going to fix that when texturing. What is the main cause of spaghetti hands and legs in Pez? It's just bad weight painting. Well, sometimes it can be because, like, the model is using bones that don't exist in the Pez skeleton anymore. That's the kind of stuff that happened with the exploding elbows for when going from 19 to 21, and that's kind of what happens with the exploding knees when you're going from 21 to 19. But most of the time it's just going to be bad weight painting, which weight painting is going to be something I will cover in this series. But it's just going to be like, for a quick example, without being able to actually weight paint anything right now, would be like, for the skeleton of our model, we're gonna have, just for the legs, our hip bone is going to be around here, and it's going to have influence around the hips. Then we'll have a thigh that should cover the entire area of the thigh all the way to the knee. We might have a knee bone, but for this example, I'm going to omit that one. And then we're definitely going to have a leg bone. So our leg runs from about the ankle to the knee, and our thigh runs about from the waist to the knee. So one reason we might have spaghetti legs would be that during weight painting, be it with like automatic transferred weights or just manual weight painting or so on, if our leg bone over here, let's say, has influence to the knee, and then halfway up the thigh, that's not going to look natural. Because then we're going to have, when our character's like bending their knee, so running motion, kicking motion, anything like that, anything that causes the knee to bend, and let's say the leg go backwards, instead of bending at the knee, it would be bending around here, around where the influence of the leg bone ends. So that's the kind of rough of it, without having weight painting open and without having any weight data over here. But that's one of the main reasons, and it's simple enough to fix if you know how to weight paint. Like, there's a couple of very powerful tools that I'm going to be using when actually weight painting this character that just make fixing things like that very much easier. But sometimes people just will not bother. Maybe they're in a hurry, or maybe they just don't know better. So I'm going to take a look at these clothespins from a couple more angles to make sure that they look okay. And then I'm going to give it a render. And that's once again added a lot of detail to our character. This one I don't quite like. I'm going to redo the positioning on this one, because it's so flat from this angle. I want it to have a little bit of depth. So that's going to be difficult with this collar. But maybe with something like this, Because the needle point's going to be a little bit bendy anyway. It's thin metal. Yeah, and that looks a lot better. It's not just completely flat from the front. So I'm going to save over 16 clothespin, because we've made progress, and I don't think I would have any reason of going back to that save state, so I don't think that warrants making another, like, numbered milestone. And then from there, I guess I'm going to keep on going with the trend of little gadget things. And I'm going to do the hairpin and earrings as well. Well, earring rather, it's singular. I also only just now noticed that these are not supposed to be in front of the ear. And that is going to be something that's going to be very difficult to fix with the kind of hair I have here. So I genuinely might need to delete one of these pieces of hair at some point, but I'm just going to forget I saw that for now. I guess maybe. Or maybe I can, like, quickly try and but I think all of this hair does need to exist, but it just needs to be tucked in behind the ear, which is going to be a pain. Because it, like, has to go all the way over here. Like this, and then like this, and then that leaves so much to be. Oh, and it's mirrored on the other side as well. Oh, no, wait, no, it's not. It's not mirrored. Yeah, okay, that's good. Let's just make sure that the other one is not mirrored either, and it's not. So I just need to be careful not to select anything on the other side. And pull it back over here. And then try and fix this over here. This entire piece might need to go. This would have been good to figure out before actually being, like, somewhat done with the hair. I'm gonna hide these two pieces for now and kind of work with bringing this higher to cover a lot more skin over here. So, okay. Starts from here and tucks in behind. I don't think our ears are too far back either. Like, that's really where they're supposed to be. Also, that's bit of a bump over there. That's actually much nicer. But yeah, something starts... Yeah, I think I'm going to have to sacrifice that piece of hair. So this one's going to start over around these parts. And kinda maybe try and tuck it in behind here, where it flows forward. Because it can't just be like this, there has to be something here. And again, careful not to select any of the other side. And this can just kind of tuck in underneath here. This needs to be brought further down anyway. Or does it? No, it needs to be covered somehow. So yeah, this is going to be the piece that ends up covering this gaping hole over here. So this has to become really, really narrow to be able to run all the way down here. Which that looks decent. But this needs to run. Oh, and that's a splitting point as well. I want to bring this to the front once it's done clearing the ear. And that needs to be wider. This needs to be tucked in behind. Now I can unhide the back hair again. This needs to be tucked in further. And then probably about this point, this can become a separate piece. But still pull back so that it gets behind the ear. I'm actually surprised that I was able to slip by as well. I just never noticed. Well, I would have noticed it because I used that side for reference on how to place the ear, but I just never really processed the fact that, oh yeah, the hair on this side, by the way, is going to need to run behind. It matches up surprisingly well as well. Like, this should be further over here. I guess we can do that. Maybe. Unless it's going to clip here. Well, I guess this can be wider as well, hopefully. Like, come around here and then around here. That'll give us a little bit more clearance on this side. So we can actually pull these out a little bit. Ah, yeah, this needs another loop over here. So that we can kind of pull it like so. Really thought I wouldn't be doing much more hair during this one. I kind of worry there's going to be a dent here until I'm able to fill this in with the... Unless I bring this much further to the front. But that wouldn't look all that natural. And yeah, it's kind of supposed to be like so. So this does need to be brought to the front as much as possible, kind of like this. And then I guess we can bring it a little bit further to the back. No, that just remakes the dent, so we're gonna have to adjust for it with our side hair over here. I don't like that either. So it has to be here. I know this will look better when I'm able to actually, like, add so much more volume to the hair, but for now, I wanted to get to a point where it would look at least presentable without that additional volume. And it's like, even though this looks like a very, very awkward kind of flow of hair, it kind of has to be that awkward because it's being forcibly tucked in behind the ear and bunched up, so smooth this as much as possible, try and fit it in. Could I maybe bring these much further to the front to help with things? Yeah, I guess that makes it a little bit better. I don't like that dent still. I had it really well covered up. I do want them hanging over there after all. Okay, that's actually better. It was just too far back. So now what I'd kind of want to do is also bring this in further to be more in line with where this actually lies. Yeah, something like that. Does PES have any hair physics? It actually does, which I actually don't think anyone has ever tried using PES hair physics for actual hair physics. It does, and that would actually be an interesting little project to like try out at some point. The one thing that people have tried using PES hair physics for is actual jiggle physics, which I can confirm it kind of works, but the problem is that it's tied to a specific shader, and that's the hair shader, so it's difficult to get those kinds of jiggle physics working with anime models because you're stuck with the shaded look. But yeah, that is actually interesting. I haven't really thought about that, but yeah, we haven't really tried using PES hair physics for actual hair, mostly because it's stupid. It's a very painful system. But yeah, PES does have hair physics, and PES by default, like default PES players do have hair physics. So I'm now a little bit happier with our newfound hairstyle that we didn't know that we were going to need until about 10 minutes ago. It's still a little bit lumpy, but that's kind of just the side effect of just being tucked in behind the ear. So some of these gaps I do want to fix still. And this gap over here. Yeah, still looks a bit unnatural. I might want to, like, even go as far as to pull these back further. Or to the side further. Something like this, and then... Nah, no. Keep it like this. It'll look a little bit unnatural from the front, but we can fix that later on when we are worrying about things other than actual, like, clothing pieces, because I do want to continue with the clothing. So again, kind of making sure that all the other areas of the hair are still fine, now that we're looking at it. Yep. So now we can move on to the earrings, and there's about 0 chance this is what the earring looks like. Like, it's very clearly more of like a boomerang kind of a shape instead of just a triangle. So or I wonder if it's supposed to have the same kind of an effect as the ears of the weird cat thing. It probably has some kind of a flame or, like, at least a light refraction effect, so... I'm gonna start with a cube, because this is our easiest way of making a triangle. And just select these here, and collapse, merge at center. No, I don't want it to be a pyramid. I want it to be more like merging these two at center. And now we have our triangle. And then it's kind of like this. But if which angle is attached? It's this. So let's see. Pull up, pull down, and pull in, and like this. There's no real, like, it doesn't even really have any... Yeah, it's just like this. It doesn't really have any rounded edges either, so I'm gonna smooth this out. I guess maybe subdivide... Nah, no. I'm gonna keep it like this, and maybe even keep it flat. And then it is earring singular. So it's just going to be on one ear, so we don't need to mirror anything. But we do need to make the piercing that's not visible under any circumstances in the 2D environment. But this is a 3D, so it's reasonable to assume that at some point we're going to be seeing the piercing as well. So it's going to be two very simple UV spheres, and I want to halve the definition of these. First, I'm adding a sphere, by the way. So just like two of these over here. I can't see them, so I don't know how big they are. I'm just going to say they're about this size. And then, like, a heart. So we've done a couple hearts already, but how I like to do them is add a cube. Delete one side so that we can mirror our cube. Give it a subdivision surface as well. bring the top side in. I'm actually just not going to do a subsurf, at least not yet. Top side in and bottom side out to adjust for the top side in. Scale on the y-axis, because it's not going to be very thick. Need more definition here. I'm going to subdivide once. And then it needs to be very angular. So this is actually about the level of angularity we're aiming for. So I'm just not going to subdivide at all. By now I think I can apply my mirror. And kind of go over here and take a look at just how angular we want to be. Another loop here and here. Bring these up a little bit. This needs to be almost a straight edge. And then I want to say these need to be pulled in closer to the middle, like so. And these then further down. And then we have the weird bump in the middle, which is going to be something like... So this is where the ridge would be. But it's not a ridge, it's more of a bump, so I want like all of this, maybe, to be elevated. The problem there is that it doesn't make the smooth edge we want. So I'm going to pull out the knife tool here. We kind of want something like this that's going to mangle our geometry. But that gives us the desired effect, I think. Kinda. So we need to add... So we need to add more vertices over there. So just kind of another one of these. And yeah, this is really going to mess with the fact that I would like to have clean wads all over. Oh, and it didn't... Yeah, now I'm going to be able to lift this more cleanly. And we kind of have our effect here. And now the important thing is going to... Well, important and also difficult thing is going to be going back to wads. So some of these solutions are going to be easy. This one's not going to be one. So we've got 5 and 3. So I guess we can take this and bring it here. And with 4s again. This is a triangle. This is a regular old quad. So I really don't know what to do about this triangle over here. And same for this triangle. This one's another easy solution. Fill in over there. And then we've got a triangle here. So I am wondering I need to remake this anyway, like so. And so. But then, I'm wondering if I can... Well, first of all, starting from here, if I can delete these faces... No, I wouldn't be able to start from there. Delete any offending faces. So this one's a quad. But I want to delete anything that is touching this area. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this right now. I guess I do want to start from the middle. So I'm going to delete this ridge. I'm going to try and figure out... Oh, that is 5 as well. Try and figure out how I would be able to... make this using quads. So need to poke another over there. Are there really 2 verts here? Or what's going on? There are, okay. So, doubles. What I'm doing right now doesn't really matter. I just want to try and see if I can make this all out of quads. Just jumped in. What are we working on? It's a very evil... very, very evil piercing for the earring that we've already made that is actually not visible on the model, but is included in the reference sheet, so I'm making it... Genuinely spent more time on this than I would have spent on, like... I don't know, several pieces of clothing, by far. And it's mostly because I want to take all of this and try and make it out of quads. Which would be a terrible idea. Can't recommend anyone do this. For something like this, like, the fact that we have triangles is not a big deal at all. So yeah, there's no easy solution to this. I would spend way too much time on this. I'm going to leave it like this. It's going to have weird geometry. You might be able to add, like, a... Where is read topology? Or was it even called read topology here? There was something. Remesh. So if I want to remesh this as blocks, no. But that's actually that's a sweet effect. SS13G and so on. Sharp. I don't want to mess with... I've messed with the Octree depth before, and that crashed my blender. So I'm not going to touch any of these. I just kind of want to see what kind of geometry that ends up with. It does make quads, but then you can also see that the solution that it makes is not very good. I want to retain the sharp edge. So yeah, this is going to be our earring. And none of these actually... I want to make those smooth. None of these actually use... I wonder what would happen if I... No, I can't make that smooth or this smooth. None of this is using any modifier, so we can all just join these together. And it'll be... The earring's going to be a lot bigger. I guess the stud's going to be smaller still. Okay, I can first place the earring. It's actually quite big from this angle, and doesn't look anything like what we've made, based on the reference, again. But I'm going to stick with the reference. And it's there now. And then, now that it's there, where do the balls go? Well, I'm gonna... Oh yeah, we're so far to the side because I'm using the other reference. Like so, more to the side here. And then try and figure out where these would go. Oh, it is a little bit weird around these parts. I would even like to... it's mirrored on the other side. I'd like to pull this back a little bit. Kinda like this. Yeah, that's so much better. Compared to this, that's unnatural, and this is much better. So, this, and this would be about here. But all visible still. And I want it to be rotated. Well, okay, it might not be possible to have it rotated that way. Make sure there's no clipping. And that's kind of where it's going to be. And then select our earring. And have that be connected as well. Like that. We don't have any kind of a side reference of how that's supposed to be, but I like the rotation over there. So hide everything else, and from here we can get a general idea of what color they should be. So I'm just going to pick... This is all going to have to be texture level. I'm going to pick a nice... Actually, I don't even need to pick a nice pink, because I already have that as part of the hair. So the material for these is just going to be our hair highlight. And then if I render... We've now got a very basic earring that's going to look a lot better when we're actually able to add texture to it later on. And then the other thing I wanted to do while we're working on small gadgets, it's this hairpin where I absolutely despise the fact that these hearts are poking out from it. But I guess that means that we can try and like use the Boolean modifier. But just going to start with a cube again as our basic shape. I should save 17 earring. And I, again, don't exactly want to trace because it's going to be rotated. So I'm going to have... Okay, maybe I do want to trace a little. Just get the rough ending points. And then immediately add our subsurf, because this is going to be... I'm going to try and go with a singular subsurf. Okay, and I'm roughly going to trace this. Even though it's from an angle, it'll still give us some useful information. So I'm going to focus on everything other than the hearts for now. And this is also, this can't be very thick. This scares me a little bit, this part. I'm going to add a loop here. roughly sketch out what we're trying to do. And then I'm going to need to add a couple loop cuts there so that I can create the hole. And it should even include these faces. The inside should be filled. And then let's just fix our geometry again. Might want one more loop there. And then we need to fix the thickness of this entire piece, because we didn't really care about that when we were extruding and rotating. Smooth is going to fix a lot of our thickness issues, and then we can just pull this back into shape. I'm going to grab on all axes other than Y, so X and Z, by grab and shift Y to exclude the Y axis. And that way we don't end up creating any extra thickness here, and then we can thicken it out to match the rest of the piece later. Yeah, and then it needs to be thicker, especially over here. And then over here also. Yeah, and even though we've got some narrower portions, I do kind of like the fact that we've got some variation. Like, I like the sharp tip over here, for example. Even though for a hairpin, oh, maybe that might be desirable. I guess it clips over here as well. I'm not really going to worry about the method of this clipping in. As long as I can just paste it on top of the hair, it's going to be fine. So I need to relieve some of the tension around this part. So I want to add more loops here. And I also, first of all, I should make this a little bit less thick, like so. Okay, I don't want these loops after all. That helps a little bit. Maybe I want that loop, but maybe not this loop. Or maybe I do want that loop as well. What I do want to do is smooth these out. But ideally in a way that will let me pull them back in like that. And that's done nothing. Yeah, there's some unnecessary tension around that area, but it's a tiny little piece of hair clip, so I don't think anyone's going to be able to notice that. So very slightly adjust these around still. And then the hearts. Which, man, the amount of hearts in this character design is pretty crazy. So, just have a heart to work with, first of all. So again, our usual trick of not actually moving the cube yet, because we need a mirror modifier. Scale it down before we mirror. Then mirror. Make it thin. And these are smooth enough to where I might want a subdivision surface for this. And that's basically our heart already. Need to pull these to the side and up further. And also make it thinner. So about now I'm fine with applying my mirror. And going over here and making sure that we kind of, yeah, we match the shape almost perfectly, so that's good. And this is where it gets interesting. So I'm going to have just our hair clip pieces. I could do... I hate that I don't have a back reference for this, because I guess these are going to be about the same thickness as our hair clip, which is still way too thick. So... yeah, why should they stick out? You will ask many such questions when you're working on a 3D model. You will... The one thing I hate is that I will never ever get to know what's going on inside the head of the character designer. Now, I have already forgotten which way around this goes. I'm going to want to add a Boolean modifier. Intersect on... okay, I'm going to name this hair clip. And this hair clip heart. And select hair clip heart over here. And set this to union. Difference. The modifier needs to be on the heart. So again, a Boolean modifier. This time hair clip. And union? No. Intersect? No. Difference? I'm not exactly getting what I want. I want to carve... basically, I want to carve a hole into this hair clip. And it should work using the Boolean modifier. So, okay, let's see what happens if I apply the Boolean. Oh, he adds the outside piece to it. Difference. Okay, I'm going to need to apply both subsurfs before I'm able to do this. So now, Boolean modifier. Our hair clip heart. And then if I apply that, we end up with basically the hole I want to cut into. But any kind of invert kind of an option. intersect. Don't want to mess with the threshold. Half, maybe? Yeah, okay, so with a difference, we end up with almost a whole. So, okay, I guess our, with difference and mesh, we want this to be thicker. Yeah, so, okay, that's kind of done it. It's ruined our geometry around here. This is pretty horrible. And I can't exactly smooth that either. So it's probably going to look better. Yeah, it's going to look better flat shaded. So then the one final thing I want to try, now that I know that it is intersect. Or difference. Anyway, I know that that's what I want, so I'm going to undo the part where I remove the subsurface. And then going to try and add Boolean hair clip height and difference, and then this needs to be thicker. Yeah, and so that's what we want. Yeah, it's not going to be the cleanest possible geometry that we end up with, because this is actually what we're working with. But yeah, I do want to apply the subsurface and then just apply our modifier. And then if I... Oh, and then I guess I really should do that for all three hearts first. Like this. Oh, that tension. Apply the subsurf, and apply the boolean. And yeah, this has to be flat. And I guess these can be smooth. And then if I give this our material, so pink, and I'm going to use the same pink and green. Yeah, it is actually just the hair pink and then the hair green. So give these our hair highlight and give this our hair highlight green. And then we can, if we want to be specific about it, we can like... No, we can't. We don't have the geometry to be able to curve it in. Like, we could do something along maybe these lines for a terrible approximation of what we're going to end up with. I'm going to see what this looks like. Oh, I've added the green twice. Yeah, I mean, okay. It's going to be fixed when we can texture this. So I'm fine with that. And then these, neither of them have modifiers anymore, so these can be joined together. I could remove doubles if I wanted to. I don't want to right now. And then we can place this. So I don't want anything distracting me. So just these bits of hair selected, where it's actually going to be clipping onto. And it clips to this. yeah, this side strand over here. So like this, and yeah, kind of like this. So now we've got our hair clip, and I'm going to start giving names to things as well. So this hair clip. This is our earring. Our clothespins. And our clothespins too. Which this is actually going to be called clothespins mirrored. And that's clothespins. And all of these are going to be part of clothing, except for our hair clip, which is I'm going to consider a piece of the hair. Because if I want to hide all of the hair, I also want to hide the hair clip itself. And just give ourselves a render. Something a little bit weird over here. Yeah, it's just that splitting point, which I might need to rethink where the hair splits over there. But I'm going to worry about that later. The important thing is that we've made some progress. And this here, I haven't been doing this for many pieces because I just haven't noticed, I haven't remembered. But I want to turn the diffuse off. And this is a very good indicator because this is a light color and this is a light color. So what happens if I have the diffuse over here set to visible is we get this kind of light bleeding from our light object into our other light colored object, which is, you know, it happens naturally and all of that, but then again, we're not in a natural scenario. This is very much an anime character, so I don't want this level of light bleed, and I just want to get the benefit of the shadows that we get from cycles. It's not happening for most of the other pieces. Like, it would be happening around the bra here, or the top, and you can see the bleeding over there, compared to this, where we only get the shadows. But luckily, most of our clothing is very dark, and dark things don't get, like, tend to bleed light in that way. So, just looking for things I might have missed. There's the zippers for the sleeves. That could be done, which I'm actually going to do now. So, not the greatest reference, but I guess start with a cube. Okay, do I want mirror? I do want mirror for this. So add our normal loops. And get our mirror going. So we start off like this. And then kind of taper off. And then here in the middle, we just have a hole. And that's a very basic zipper. I think the hole is bigger. It's, yeah, very much bigger and actually rounder as well. So I might need to add a subsurf to this. So yeah, more like that. And this is still way too thick. And I also want to fill in the inner edge of this hole. Oh, where is my fill going? Oh yeah, it's because of this. Because we have a loop over here, which actually we don't need. So let me just undo all I did there. dissolve our edge here, and now, if I try this again, I should be able... Yeah, now Blender can figure it out. And then I'm going to add a subsurf and see... Yeah, that does about what I want. It makes it round than what it was before, which is what we want over there. I'd love to be able to keep it like this. I like the rectangular things that don't need a subdivision surface modifier for simple things like that. Like this is just a zipper. But I'm going to keep it this way. So the hole over here gets narrower. And then I guess this is pulled a little bit further. And yeah, that's going to be our zipper. So apply the mirror. Unhide our sleeves, specifically for the jacket. Oh, well, the jacket entirety. Position our zipper around here, somewhere. Still have no idea what this is zipping. But that's fine. It just exists to add things to the model, and then we add our mirror back, because it's also on the other side. Call that not just zipper, but jacket zipper. And give it our metal material. And now our jacket has a completely pointless sleeve zipper. So now I believe that is everything waist up, apart from the hands done. Because there's no surprises over here anymore. Again, these are going to be painted on in texturing. There's that loop that I forgot existed. So yeah, I guess we can add the belt loop still. Which is going to be another cube. Scaled down. Like this, and then we need to... I'm going to add 3 loops to have nice spacing, and then I'm going to dissolve the middle loop. And then we need some retention up here. This is one of those things that the Blender grid is useful for. If you ever find yourself... Oh, that is really far down. Find yourself like needing to have 2 things in the same spot on 2 sides. So now they're evenly spaced, so I can delete these faces, and there's our very basic loop. I'm once again going to close the inner edge, and then probably give it a subsurf. And for that to look nice, we're unfortunately going to need to add at least 1 more loop on both of those sides. And then this is going to be part of the belt. Around there. So it is quite a bit wider on the x-axis like this. But it's not this big around the endings. Okay, I don't want subsurf. I'd like it to be smoother. I don't want to deal with subsurf or something like this. So then squish it in. And that's going to be fine. Our belt would have been pants colored. Hey. Okay, so it's the material selector. So now we get to play the game of finding out if we have an autosave again. I'm going to try and recover last session first. Nope, that's an aesthetic request, I believe. So, recover autosave. 2207, so it hasn't even auto-saved. So we're just loading the earring. Oh, well, loading this. So it is the material thing that's causing that. So what have we lost? We've lost the entirety of our hair clip. And the zipper. So I once again do want to find out. So if I were to load an autosave, recover autosave, why is it not autosaving? Like, is this folder just too full? Because that's when I started working. He was able to autosave that fine. Well, that means that now I'm just going to be once more speed running this section. And I know for a fact I'm not going to remember this, but I really should save before adding materials heading into the future. We'll see. We'll see how many materials that lasts us. Okay, so this time, I think I'm going to do this extruding already using our excluding the y-axis method. Okay, and that's kind of nicer. So I know that this has to be actually shaded. We're eventually going to be adding the heart boolean. Kind of want a loop running down the middle there, makes things easier for us. And I do know that I want 2 loops around here so that I can create our hole over here. Another loop on both of these sides. And we're pretty close already. So I need to fill this inner edge. There. And then I did like these in the end. Still a little bit to be fixed over here. Also, I think the rain came and went, and the thunderstorm I was promised has not materialized at all, and now it's just hot and humid. Been waiting the whole day. One more loop here. This, I think, ends up with a lot more loops for detail than the previous attempt. But that's fine. We get to spend a little bit more triangles now that we're upset at Blender. So that's good. And then our hearts. So another cube, and we know already from experience that this one is going to be subsurfed. It's not worked fine. So mirror clipping and also subsurf. Just start normally. Loops for details. And then this needs to be pulled further down. Same for this. So yeah, these need to be more aggressive. Yeah, like so. This can be smoothed out, and then I'm going to apply our mirror. And go to where this was. And yeah, it lines up perfectly. So this needs to be about the thickness, or even thicker, than our hair clip itself. And then we can apply the subsurf to both of these, and give our hair clip here. So this is hair clip, and this is hair clip hearts. What was the first model you worked on for the 4TC/VGLL? The first model I ported would have been something for A. Back in like 2016. I would not remember what it was. It would have been an anime head of some sort. Whatever was popular in 2016. It wasn't... I remember Kokona from Flip Flappers being very early on, but that wasn't the one. That came pretty soon after, but it wasn't the one. But let's say Kokona is the first one I remember for just a model, and that was just a head model. The first full body would have been Carl Franz for TG, because some people will remember the name Nuclear Fission Robot. So NFR, out of nowhere, came to me asking if I would be able to put this model into PES, and by that point I hadn't done any full body models, but I told him that, yeah, I mean, sure. And just used that to learn that. And then the first, like, fully custom model that I've made from scratch would have been Sand Casino, the OSG/RSG stadium for BGL 12, I want to say. That was made completely from scratch, aside from the statues around the surroundings. But apart from the statues, it was completely custom. And I had no idea what I was doing at that point. It's like, going back now and taking a look at it, it's like, it's a miracle I was able to get that presentable. It would be so much easier to do knowing what I know now. And then the very first, like, actual custom anime model I made would have been Selen for VT. Because again, what happened was, I had done custom model stuff before and like extensive modification, but I hadn't actually done a fully custom actual character model before. And the exact same thing happened where Triangle just came to me and said, hey, this would have been, I don't know, autumn 21 or something along those lines. Hey, can you do a model for Selen? Because I was doing all the other requests for VT already, and I just told him that, yeah, I mean, sure. Turns out that, yeah, did have the skill set required to do it. And like nowadays, looking back at Selen after having like dozens of these models under my belt, it's like it's the exact same feeling of, man, how did how did I sign off on this? How did I ever let this get out onto the world? But that's just how it goes. You just learn different techniques and you just do your reps and get better, and you'll just get better at the modeling. So you're saying you don't do 3D modeling for a living? I wish. Yeah, no way. It's like, I mean, I guess someone would pay for something like this, but this is nowhere near professional quality. So, especially if if you ever download an actual official MMD, it's like the things that actual professional modelers are able to do with just really good texturing work and also really good modeling work is I've seen models that clocked in at about like 40,000 triangles that look incredible. And it's just a really good understanding of 3D modeling and topology and just how to make things that are very smooth and nice looking with very few triangles, and then making up for the lack of definition you get from that lack of triangles with your incredible texture work. So that's one of the things, if anyone wants to get started with 3D modeling or get more serious about 3D modeling, is always keep on looking at other people's work. Every now and then, whenever I come across something or I'm struggling with facial features and so on, I'll go and take a look at a HoloLive MMD or something along those lines that I know was professionally made and like cost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, and just take a look at how they did it, and that helps a lot. Also, you are a self-learner. Yeah, basically. So I had the skill set required for, because I started doing aesthetics work for PES back in like 2015, 2016. Would have been around VGL 6, basically. And eventually, after so many years of just porting models and getting better at that, you kind of realize that, oh yeah, I know how to drive Blender now, so you kind of have most of the skill set required to be able to start 3D modeling. Like, there's a couple of things you will not know, like, you probably won't be comfortable working with modifiers like subsurface and so on, and a couple of the, like, extruding and tracing around a ref sheet and all of that. But how I learned, and how I know at least one other A manager back in the day learned, was a playlist of video tutorials on YouTube by a man called Daniel Kreuter. So that's Kreuter, Kreuter. And specifically, the playlist is called something along the lines of Anime Character Modeling Tutorials 2014 number 2. So if someone wants to learn in a video format that's more compressed and runs for the duration of about 2 of these streams, then that's the way to go. That's how I learned, and he does have newer tutorials as well. That one just so happened to be made for the 2.7 series of Blender, which is what the couple was using. Like, back when I started learning, way back in the day, and back when that video was recorded, Blender 2.7 was actually the freshest Blender we had. Like, the reason why we're on 2.79 was because back in the day when the original tools were being developed, the 2.7 series was still fresh and actively being released, and then with 2.8, Blender broke backwards compatibility for add-ons. So all of the Blender tools that we have would have had to be rewritten for Blender 2.8. And at that point, we didn't have, like, we had Blender Anon, but he was very busy. So he was never going to do that. And we didn't really have anyone else who was able, willing, and insane enough to go in and try and port the Blender tools to a completely new version of Blender. So that's why we're stuck in quotation marks. I like 2.79. I love this. I have no desire to move on to any of the newer Blenders, even though it crashes every now and then. It doesn't have like all the shiny new features. I'm pretty happy being here, and I'm gonna resist moving as long as I can. But that's kind of the reason why we are quote-unquote stuck on 2.7 now. 7.9. So Foreground would be able to do it. Like, if he wanted to, he would be able to just port the FMDL tools to work for new Blender. And he's expressed the willingness to do it as well, but he wouldn't be willing to maintain both that version and the version for 2.79. So, unfortunately for him, and for some new people, the most of ASCO and people he would be consulting for that kind of a stuff and asking, oh, do you want this? Are stubborn old fags like myself, where I just tell him, no, not really. I'm fine on being on 2.79 for as long as we can possibly be. But if he did port the tools to new Blender, I would have to move. I would grumble about it, but I would move eventually. But just don't tell him I said that. He will actually do it. So this was difference, and just like this. Does 3.x have any new cutting-edge technology? It has a completely new rendering engine, for one, where... Because right now I'm using cycles, and the thing with cycles is, well, if I unhide things, you can see that it takes a while to render out the scene anytime I'm adjusting. Blender 3.0 has Eevee, which uses, I believe, ray tracing, which means that renders are instantaneous. So that would be something that would be nice, just instantaneous renders, but I'm not jumping across just for that. And the other thing 3.0 and so on has is that it just has cumulative updates. So one of the things I can probably find over here somewhere in the hair, maybe. Okay, so I need to save anyway, so I'm going to save here. 18 hair clip. Can't type. Started. If I load this. No, actually not that one. That's going to have the modifiers applied. If I load something like front hair connected, let's go with that. Yeah, here you can see that I'm using a solidify modifier. But then the end of the solidify, the end of the hair, like the twin tails over here, is all weird. And that's because the solidify modifier is clipping into itself. It's too thick, and around the tip over here, it can't figure out what to do, so it just kind of freaks out. That is something that supposedly has been fixed in future Blender versions, where there's another method of solidifying, where there's going to be a drop down here somewhere that can be either simple or complex. So, for something simple, like the makeshift ropes over here, a simple solidify would be fine. There's nothing to be tripping over about. But then, for something like this, that is complex and curved geometry that like twirls around and so on, having the solution set for complex solidify would be nice. It wouldn't end up in this kind of weird geometry that I'm going to have to, like, if I were to apply all of these, I'd then have to go in later and try and make any sense of what I can do over here to undo that. So there's just a lot of quality of life stuff that's been added to the newer blenders. So what I'd say is that even though I'm working in 2.79 and like singing the praises of 2.79 and so on, and trying to justify using it despite its issues and so on, I'd say that if you're completely new to Blender and want to learn modeling specifically and don't necessarily want to learn this just to work with PES, is I'd say that if you're willing, learning 3.0 is not that bad of an idea. Just learning the latest Blender. Because the reason why I'm sticking to 2.79 is because it's what I've worked with for 7 years by now. So I'm stuck on this version. This is what I know, and I hate that new Blender redid the user interface and all of that. So I would have to relearn things, and that's something I dislike. I've built up all of this information, all of this knowledge and skill and muscle memory and so on in this one version of the software. And then the open source developers decide that, you know what? It's time for our bi-yearly user interface overhaul. And all of that, all of a sudden I have to relearn everything and find out where things are all over again. And there's no way to go back to, like, I would be fine with it if I could just tell Blender 2.8 and onwards that, okay, this is cool and all, but can I just have can I have a Blender 2.79 skin? Can I have the Blender 2.79 layout? As far as I can tell, that's not possible. So, whenever I have time, and whenever I don't want to like actively work on a project, or I'm willing to have a longer, several month long project, where I can kind of relearn modeling in a newer environment of Blender, that's going to be when I consider moving. But for now, especially with like VT League, request season, and so on, I'm not going to start experimenting like that. So I can apply our Boolean, and we have our cuts again. And yeah, we do have. This is solid as well. So I can now give our hearts and our hair clip the period materials. I'm not going to go for the... No, I am. It looked nice enough where I'm just going to go for the pink around here as well. Yeah, and then place this again. Use our ref sheet as kind of a guideline on how big it should be, and then just place it where it needs to be. I want it to be a little bit bigger. Yeah, like that. And then rendered. And yeah, that's good. So I'm going to toggle this off again. Oh yeah, the keys thing is gone because I had to restart Blender. Oh, we've got some poking over here. So that's the hair clip. And this is the earring. Clothespins mirrored. And and clothespins. So these are again clothes and hair. And then we can make the zipper. Or remake the zipper, but luckily this was very simple. So I did mirror this. And I did have a subsurf eventually, so I'm going to add that from the beginning. This extrudes up and then comes in like this. And then we need those those loops so that we can add our hole over here. The hole is a little bit wider. This gets pulled a little bit. And then it narrows down over here. And that's our zipper reborn, except I need to fill in the rim over here. Yeah, and that's about right. This is not this far down. And then we can apply the mirror and bring it over here. Use the reference as a reference for about where the zipper needs to be. Not exactly, but about. And then call it zipper. I'm going to call this 19 zipper as well. I forgot already that I called it sleeves zipper. Give it our metal material and add it to our clothing. So then the final thing to add would be our cube. Where I need to add these loops. I want it to be about that high and about that high. So now I can about that thick. So I want to delete these faces and then fill in. I do also want to dissolve that edge, and I want to fill in the inside. Yeah, and that's our basic loop. So it was surprisingly thick. It's over here. Yeah, surprisingly, like, even thicker than this. I've got that the wrong way around as well. That rotation was not necessary. So yeah, about this thick. But then I imagine it would be slimmer. And these are not going to be as thick. And in relation to the breasts, it's underneath the left one. So about here. I'm going to hide a little bit of the geometry that's in the way so I can see a little bit better. Okay, even though it's supposed to be over there, I guess I can fit it in here without too much clipping. No, I want it to be over here to reduce the amount of clipping. Again, non-canon, not accurate to the model. But this is not official. I'm not getting paid for this, so I am... And I have no guarantee this is going to ever be used in anything other than personal projects anyway, so... Now, even though this took all of 1 minute, I'm gonna Control S over our zipper thing, and let's see. Yeah, did I even... I want to say I even restarted Blender before starting this session, so... It just kind of makes no sense. I do need to, like, for future sessions, I do need to figure out what's going on with the autosave, not autosaving, because I rely on that so much. I will not remember to save every 5 minutes myself. So now with that little bit, I think we're completely done from the waist up. Well, the things we're missing are this, hands in general, and gloves. Yeah, nothing really up here. And our boots. And, oh yeah, the ID card. And whatever mechanism it uses to connect over here. And there's, like, buttons as well. Yeah, I'll add those as well. So for buttons, we actually don't have to go very far. I can just clone one of these, have it be its own selection. I think I pressed F, but that did nothing, so okay, good. Just making sure I haven't accidentally just misclicked or pressed the wrong key and added more geometry. So there's a button here. Which can be mirrored. There's buttons here as well. On the inside. Well, okay, yeah, basically here. I've realized that this should be curving a lot harder. Should be doing like... Okay, well, this is very difficult to accomplish, but... Okay, I can add a loop. No, okay, I don't like that. So I'm just gonna leave it like this for the time being. And I can't undo the placement of that anymore, but it just goes back over here. So there's our jacket buttons. Since I cloned it from another clothing piece, it's going to be called 001. So I can call this jacket buttons. And then this. It's going to be thick. I could add a cube and solidify, but rather a plane and solidify, but I'm going to add a cube. It's going to be about this kind of form factor, maybe. I can roughly get an idea here. Yeah, we've got the form factor correct. So there's going to be a loop going through over there, and then it somehow just pierces the label of the collar. Of the jacket, rather. So, I mean, I guess like this, and add our circle, and make sure that it's 8 vertices. Like this. This has to be separate, because I do need to solidify this part. Smooth. Solidify. I'm going to give it a subsurf as well for good measure, not a double solidify. Subsurf. Yeah, it's fine like this for now. I'm going to apply both of those so I can join it together. Yeah. And then I can move all of this to be here. You kind of use this as a reference for size and rotation, and then bring it to where it needs to be. And then adjust our loop. And this can, like, do weird things. So, kind of like this. ID card. And the loop is going to be our hair highlight color. And then the actual card itself is going to be just something like hair. I want something white, kind of like this. What is that weird circle when you're transforming? So this is called proportional editing. And anything within the influence of this circle, not quite, it's not moving these things, but I can make this circle bigger or smaller, and anything within its influence is also going to be moved with my selection. And this is one of the most powerful tools and most common tools that we're going to be using when modeling, because, for example, let's say that I don't like the way this hair is bending over here. I can do something like this and pull the entire thing back or entire thing forward, and so on, instead of moving individual vertices one at a time. So that's really powerful. Call this our ID card, and this our belt loop, and they're both going to be clothing. And then take a look at the render. Yep, I like that. So, we're down to this thing, which again I want to leave as late as possible because of this indentation. But we might be kind of hitting that point. We might be hitting about as late as possible here. There's the boots, which are going to be painful. And then the hands. So of these, I think it might be finally time for the boots. So to be able to get there, I'm kind of conscious of time. I don't want to go too long, because I do have things to do in the morning. But I'm going to see if I can sketch out a decent pair of boots in like half an hour. So first of all, we need to know where our foot is going to be. So that's about where our ankle is, and then from there, I'm going to construct a very basic foot. This actually could be pulled out a little bit to add more roundness. Yeah, and I'm going to construct a very basic foot. So I'm going to select everything except the back 3 vertices. And from the side, do something along these lines. Then select these 5 verts and use them to form our heel. Then I always forget how this goes. Something like this. Then pull the front down. Connect the middle bits. I'm going to undo a little bit because I did have that selected. Okay, I'm going to select only the outer edge. And this way I can like connect those together. And as you can see, these are kind of... Yeah, that connects nicely. These are really basic feet, but it just kind of works. It works for what we're about to do. So I'm going to pull these back a little bit. And it's basically as if our character has like stockings. So I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. Yeah, something along these lines. And then I'm going to go through the method I used for hands when we're working on hands, but that still applies to feet. So let's say that if we did want to add the toes and like more definition, I'd probably separate them about here so that we can add more detail. And I'd even redo the bottom here, have this be scaled like so that we can like add more loops over there. I'd have these connected. And do a flatter bottom of the foot like this. So now we would have a nice definition. So therefore we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So then we'd want to like slightly rejig these loops over here and end up with something along. Can I just delete the, delete only edges and faces? Or just only faces, yeah, so that we have something along these lines. And then we'd be able to like, it's going to be a very, very crude sketch. No, I don't want to use grid fill. Well, this would be like our starting point, and we'd need one more loop for all the toes, so something along... Guess I would want to add it on this side. Although the structure of our foot is not really made for what I want to do here. So if I wanted to add a loop around here, it would go all the way through here. So we might want to even delete those faces and rejig this side too. Because we have 8 vertices. I'd want a loop here. So yeah, we've got more loops on the top than we've got around the bottom. So we'd want something like this, where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then add one more. Yeah, because that's only 4. So we want to add one more, let's say about there, and about there. Select this entire thing. Scale Y0 to bring it all together. Do the same for this loop. Fill all of this in. Select these and delete only the faces, and then we'd be able to do something along like these lines. And this clearly needs a lot of work. First of all, that has to be flipped and then like smooth a couple times or so on. I'm not going to go through with all of that because I don't think we're ever going to have. Actually, going to just undo to the point where, yeah. I don't think these feet are ever going to be visible, but this will make a lot more sense while we're working on the hands as well. The hands method is very usable for feet as well, but that would basically be how you would want to go about it. You'd want to end up in a situation where the bottom of the foot is as flat as you can get it, and then you'd end up with an even 5 faces where the toes are supposed to start from, and then you extrude from there, and then spend more time on actually making the foot look a lot more natural than what we ended up with. But these feet exist only so that I have an idea where the boots should go. So for the boots, there are 2 ways to approach this that I use. One of them is adding a circle and the other one is adding a cube. But since we have such a long body of the boots, like they go up so high up the leg, I think I'm going to start with a circle. So give us our 8 vert circle and position it to about where our boot would be starting. So there. And we're going to mirror, subserve. I'm going to double subserve at the start here, but that for boots, you quickly get to the level of complexity where a double subserve is going to be detrimental. So I'm very quickly going to be going back to a singular subserve. So extrude these up until about the point where we're going to start working on the heel. And then we are kind of going to do the exact same thing that we did with the feet. I understand why ref sheets are drawn to show the tops of the footwear, but it does make it a bit harder to translate into 3D like this. Yeah, I'm going to save this as 21 shoes started, and I am going to show you exactly what I think about that. There's Hannah Baby and Ready to Text. I return to this. This is my casing point. I don't even have... Hanabi does not have a ref sheet, by the way. This is something I pieced together from the debut stream. This is all we know about. These shoes are never shown anywhere. But for some reason, the character decided that, you know what, these have to be the most intricate, the most fly streetwear running shoes as you can possibly get down over in Indonesia. And you get to see them from a rotated angle that is impossible to trace. And also, by the way, you never get to see the inside, like the inner edge or the back of the shoes. So Yeah, have fun with that. So back to, not back to that one, back to this one. You can also tell from the amount, like my numbering system, this is 18 ready to text. Hanabi is a very simple character. Whereas we're up to 21 shoes started. And now we're not far from texturing, like all we need is shoes and hands and the gloves. And then this 1/8 of a garter. But still, I chose Ember for several reasons, and one of them being that she's got a little bit of everything, like light clothing, but still enough clothing and gadgets to where it's going to be useful learning all of this, and then a lot of exposed body so that the body is going to be... We need to define the body a little bit further than just having something roughly shaped like a body underneath a lot of clothing. I'm scared of texturing since it looks like some paper model from Poe. Yeah, it's especially at the start, whenever you are only just learning about UV unwrapping and so on, texturing is a very daunting prospect. But there's ways around that as well. I don't use Substance Painter, I really should, but there's ways that really take UV unwrapping out of texturing. So, especially with the last model I did, I learned a lot about texturing, and I'm a lot more comfortable with doing texturing and showing off how some very basic texturing techniques work. Like, you definitely don't have to be a 2D artist to be able to do texturing. So here I'm going to do about the same thing that we did with the foot, and just kind of encase our foot sort of like this, and then do our heel from this side. And it runs pretty deep, so I want to give this a double extrusion. And then we kind of need to connect these together. So I'm thinking that I definitely do want something kind of like this, or the actual shape of the heel. I'm going to hide the foot for a while. Then I want to go up from here until up to this point. So again, bring our middle vert. And kind of keep on filling our geometry. And this middle vert is kind of going to guide us to where we want to be. So this is a problem point here, because we've got our... Yeah, I guess it goes like that, maybe. Well, 100% happy with that. So instead, I'm going to approach it from a different direction. I'm going to start from here. And thanks to the kind of geometry we had with our 8-sided or 8 vert... What am I doing here? Is it more like... No, 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 no. I know that this over here continues like this. And this should go like this. So am I... Yeah, now I'm able to fill the bottom. Kinda. I still think this should exist. Yeah, okay, now. More like this. And then we need to find a way to connect this to our heel. which again should happen kind of naturally with our middle vert as a guideline. So yeah, now here, should be able to bridge our middle bits, and that ends up in 5, but we can adjust for that by doing this, I believe. Yes. So sometimes approaching the model from a different, like just from the different side is going to be fine. And now we need to adjust for, I'm going to try and like get the position and alignment and rotation and so on of the shoes right from this angle. It's going to be kind of difficult, but it'll give us some kind of a sense of that this is not at all right. And we need to fix a bunch of things over here. Yeah, I'm just going to undo that entire rotation and work on it like this. So I want this bottom to be flat, and to help with that, I want to add a loop there to make it flatter. Not quite as flat, but we're just kind of sketching things out right now, and the heel needs to be flat as well. So I think this is still too high, so bring that down a little bit. I'm going to add another loop of definition here. Although I'd prefer if I were able to add it from here. So there might be a better way to do this entire heel kind of an ordeal. Yeah, adding any loops is kind of painful at the moment, but I do want to add those. So this edge here actually goes much more like this. I'm going to bring this to the front as well. Going to make things a little bit more natural. Yeah. I will never remember. There's no way. So that's kind of the shape of them already. They're more rounded towards the front. And there's also going to be the concern of, like, are these... I guess these are not big enough. One thing I simply don't have the eye for yet, on like anatomy level, is just how big or small feet and footwear should be. So we kind of have this bump over here already, but I want to make it more visible by doing something like that. And it's going to be about this point. I'm going to save over the shoe started bit. I want to add our material. So this is really going to be the same as pants again. I mean, it is. It's just the same material. And then the bottom, I'm going to want to have, and then most of the heel, yeah, the heel up until this point. I'm going to want these to be more metallic, and this way I'll be able to tell. Oh, we're flipping through over there as well. Well, that would also be because our foot is not in the kind of an angle that we would have for a shoe like this. It would be more like this. And our feet are definitely way too small, but that doesn't matter really at this point because they're not going to be visible. So this is going to be the same metalness as we've got everywhere. The same very plasticky metalness. I'd like the bottom edge here to be more defined as well. So I could add another loop, kind of like this. And then sort of bring the actual bottom of the shoe more in like this. That's the heel I'm seeing from behind there. I don't want to see the heel. It should be about level, like so. I want this to be a little bit thicker and more pronounced. This kind of creasing detail over here, we're going to just have to add at a texture level. I'm considering adding this, like the middle bit of the shoe, the flexible part as well at a texture level. Unless I have a very clean way of... I guess I do have a very clean way of adding it. I'm going to bring this down further. Like this, so that they actually have some length to them. And apply that adjustment to our foot as well, our prototype foot, that we're just only using for scaling purposes, and like as a guideline for where things should be. Want to bring this further down to be more in line with the rest of it. Oh, we do have a back reference. So we can tell that, yeah, it's actually pretty angular at the back here. So would this be able to help us a little bit when it comes to placing our shoe? Because it would be rotated like this and this. Oh, this might work. This might also not work. These are the things. These are the little things where it's like the toes are clearly down on the ground over here. The toes are further down than the heel, and then all of a sudden the heel is further down than the toes. That's going to be a perspective thing, but that doesn't translate to 3D. So I don't know. I'm keeping it flat. But I do want to take a look at the back a little bit to see that, yeah. The heel is going to be, I want to say, narrower. And it should be more rectangular. So I guess this needs to be buffed out. It's going to be slightly hard trying to make it rectangular. But something I can try. It's going to be scaling along Y and 0 for this. Fixing the weird bumpiness over here by scaling the bottom by scale Z0. And the other one with Z0 as well. Same for this. And I think it's still a little bit too wide. Or maybe it's not wide enough. Oh, I think that's way too wide. Yeah. So if I want to do any kind of an adjustment, it would have to be... I can't really add a loop over there. I think this rides a little bit higher. Like this. Can probably push these down. No, I don't want to though. Oh, and yeah, of course, the big thing I'm missing is that this is not suddenly going to transition into like leather from the metal. So that will make things a little bit better. So now we can see that these need to kind of be... This is going to be difficult to get right, and this is going to be something that has to be... Yeah, I'm not going to do that on a mesh level. I'm going to do that on a texture level, where once we're texturing, I'm going to shave off a lot of this metal over here and turn it back into leather. But now it looks a lot better than we've got the actual, like, full sole and heel of the boots being metal. So I actually think these are about fine. I still, to this day, do not have the eye for footwear. So to me, these look like they are a little bit on the thick side. So I like naturally would want to... I think this is going to be sensible. Would want to bring them down in thickness a little bit. I wish I had a side reference. A side reference would help a lot here. And yeah, they are going to be flatter. So much flatter. Something like this is going to make a lot more sense than this. I kind of want to pull this back and down. Maybe not back, but down. And by this point, has it crashed again? At least I saved a couple times. But let's see. Oh, we have an autosave, but that's from... that's actually from the last time Brenda did crash, so... I'm going here. And yeah, we haven't lost much. Just the fact that I need to add our material, and then our material for the bottom over here. Gonna be metal. That wasn't even in the material selector. That was just going into edit mode, so once again, something to figure out, because I don't think there's going to be a session tomorrow, so that'll be some homework for me to figure out. I'm never going to figure out what's crashing. That's going to be impossible. But I am going to try and figure out what is preventing Blender from being able to make autosaves. It's one of the reasons I am able to live with 2.79. Well, first of all, this doesn't really happen. I think it might be just like system resource related, because I remember for the previous project that you saw that ran up to like 53 or 54 saves, I crashed about 2 or 3 times, and all of those crashes happened while I was like rendering something very intensive or just working with materials well after modeling was done and texturing was being done. So those crashes never actually cost me any data. But the main reason I'm able to work in 2.7 is that most of the time autosave works. Just not now for some reason. I want this to be metal as well. I need to fix the bottom now. That needs to be flattened and brought up a little bit to really get the flatness across. And then the heel once again needs to be adjusted. So that needs to be flat. That needs to be flat. These back ones over here, at least these ones, should be flat on the y-axis. And then I think the heel should be narrowed a little bit. Yeah, like so. And then I was adjusting this a little bit. And then the width of them as well. And yeah, then I want them to be a little bit more round. Well, this is going to be the point where almost thought it crashed there as well, but that's a good reminder to save. I want to delete the feet now. They've served their purpose. They've given us a guideline of where to work with the boots. So I should solidify these. That's actually about a good thickness already. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I said this was going to be a shorter one, and like maybe along the lines of about 2 hours. That has not come true at all. So I really do need to start wrapping up here at some point. So the one last thing I want to do, I'm not going to add the belts just yet. And for the belts, we're just going to be recycling the arm belts anyway. I want to try and get this kind of middle bit done. So we have the geometry to do it. Oh, and this needs to be wider. And then also there's a clear difference in levels. So I guess this is like rotated more like that. So I want these vertices to be about where that separation starts. And then I want to find some vertices about where it ends. So over here. It would run from here to here, which is not ideal. I'd like it to be the same loop, unfortunate. I'm going to bring this in. And I'm going to bring... Oh, but here it is this. Okay. Bit weird. So I want it to be these. So in order to bring these back, I need to add a loop around here. and that curves around the other side. So I'm going to need to have this be our starting point here after all. And then anything now inside our helper loop that we've added here, that's actually kind of ruined the front of our shoe, but we'll fix that later. I want to scrunch up to fit that middle part. Now the boot is once again rotated, so I'm not going to try and match that exactly. And be able to see a little bit better, I want to give these a different material. Do I have anything darker than the pants? Would lashes be darker? Yeah, it would. So now I can kind of see where that runs. And I'm going to kind of be able to go in and smooth out any trouble that adding that helper loop has caused. This is one of the problems with adding any more loops to something that you've spent a decent bit of time working on already. You might end up distorting geometry like this. And then you need to go in later and fix it. So there's still some bumpiness over here. And that's added actually just a nice little kind of groove around the front of the shoe as well. So those loops work fine. And right now, we can tell that these are shoes, and that's enough for me. A lot of the shoe detail, like the shading and the studs and all of that, is going to come from texturing once again. So I want to have these be a little bit thicker after all. Uh, 0.15 there. And then 22 shoes before anything goes horribly wrong. Give it a render. They might still be on the bit like smaller size. So I'm going to scale them up. And now if I kind of rotate, you can see that they sort of match the... Apart from the fact that this needs to be further down. And also a little bit skinnier. Okay, I still liked it as a little bit skinnier. But just making sure that, yeah, bring it down a bit. Make it skinnier. And then this ridge here shouldn't exist. But this I want to be more pressed in. Yeah, this part in general is not supposed to be... It's supposed to be indented. So pick all of these. and actually pull them in like that. I guess it should extend to over here as well. No, not like that. So these need to be a little bit further forward, after all. And yeah, something more like that. Except these, like the entire front of the boot needs to be further forward. Kind of something like this. And that just needs to be more circular in general. I just think they're massive. Yeah, I'm gonna ignore the ref sheet and just... I think this looks better. Like from the side over here, they look a little bit small. But from the top here, this looks fine. So I don't know. I'm gonna leave them like this for now. So let's take one final render and see if there's anything obvious missing. Because the only things missing should be the hands and the gloves and then the garter. And then like take a look at our boots as well. Because right now, as they are, I really do like their shape. Like these are, as far as shoes go, these have gone well. I'm really not all that good at doing shoes. This should be a little bit rounder. I think that's done a little bit. And then pull it back up. Save that over shoes. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and confirm that the things we still need are going to be our hands and gloves. Well, the belts for the shoes as well. I'm not looking forward to texturing that part, by the way. I'm used to working with, like, simple colors and no multicolor gradients, but I'm sure there's going to be a tool for that in CSP. So... all of this is fine. That's going to be textured, and so is this. The buttons have been placed. I now realize that these are actually the insides of the buttons, and the actual buttons themselves are on the outside. So I guess I can fix that here, where this actually needs to be... I'm going to worry about that later. Or I could do something along these lines. The real solution here would be to solidify the button harder. My solution of not wanting to mess with the modifier at the moment is going to be this, and this is also not completely clipped onto the jacket. Yeah, there we go. And that's completely fine. I'm not going to do the same thing over here, because I don't even know what the purpose of this button is. Save again, so that we don't lose that one button. And... yeah, I think we've got everything, other than the well, the obvious things we're missing. That's going to be textured, even though it looks 3D, so I might add that at some point as a 3D element. But I think we're only missing the belts for the boots, and this one, and then hands and gloves. So I don't need to save, because all I've done is control... Well, okay, I'm going to save. I was going to say I don't need to save, because all I've done is Control Z and Control Shift Z for checking the model. Well, I'm just going to save just to be sure. And instead of 2 hours, we went for 3 hours and 20 minutes. The supposed thunderstorm never happened. We got like the most pathetic 10 minutes of heavy rain, and then it was over. So upset about that one. But we made good progress despite crashing twice, so I need to figure out what's going on there. Or just start saving even more frequently. But we've made good progress, and next session, definitely, we're going to be able to finish out the clothing, which means that it's possible that next session we're going to start texturing. Almost certainly going to start texturing. I don't think it's going to take me 3 hours to do 2 hands, cloning the arm straps to be boot straps, and then adding the singular garter. So yeah, definitely going to start texturing next session, which I know it's been like 15 hours, maybe, I want to say, but it feels like this model's flying around along compared to some of the other things I've done. What part of the body is the hardest to make? The hair. By far. Trying to think of anything that would come even closer to the hair. Some clothing, if there's like very intricate clothing, anything with a lot of frills, a lot of folds, and so on. And then I dislike hands. I never can get hands to come out the correct way. But they're not difficult per se. They're just something I personally struggle with. So yeah, I'd say the hair. The hair, it can be so complex, and there's so many things to consider, and like natural flow of hair and curvature and so on. So if possible, I'd like to very much get better at doing hair. Because you're not going to be able to tell that like this doesn't curve quite the way I want it to, and like this is just a weird clump that I had to put in here to make sure that she's not bald in any spots, and that this is an absolute nightmare trying to tuck this in behind the ear while also having long back hair. After we're done adding a texture, and after like, even from here, you can't really tell. You can tell that there's something a little bit odd happening over there and over here and so on. But when you consider the character as a whole, even if I zoom in as far as I can over here, it's like you can tell something's a little bit off and there's some junk and so on. But then once we add a texture over that, the impact's going to be minimal whenever we're able to like really take the back hair over here and like take vertices like these and just pull them over to the actual back of the head so that it's not just floating. It's going to make things a lot better. But yeah, I'd say the most difficult part is going to be the hair. If we're talking just the body itself and not even hair, then I'd say the face can be difficult, but I'd say the hands. Bodies in general, maybe the ears. I'm really pleased with how these ears turned out, even though, like, the top over here is still a bit weird. But yeah, next session, gonna wrap up the actual modeling part and move on to texturing. And that session, I don't think it's going to be tomorrow. So tomorrow's going to be a break, but I'm going to try and get one in during the weekend, at least one. So on Saturday or Sunday, I don't know which yet, or maybe both, who knows? That'll depend on scheduling. But I'll, once again, whenever I figure that out, I'm gonna just announce that in the VGL server and in 4CCG as well. And definitely gonna try and get at least one Saturday or Sunday, ideally both. But more on that probably tomorrow or early Saturday. So I will see you then, Saturday or Sunday.